Well, yesterday was May the 4th. Today is Cinco de Mayo, and I am resting. I got to do some stuff, some errands, but I've been super busy. I have not gone live in forever, in a long, long time. I don't think I've gone live this year. So, yeah, that's a long time. So, um, yesterday I was thinking about it being May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And then today I was thinking, hey, let's do a live because I haven't done one in a while. Also, last month was National Poetry Month. This month is Mental Health Awareness Month. So last month I was focusing on poetry and I was reading excerpts from my memoir, Plenty of Guppies and Other Dating Misadventures. And my goal was to read you a poem every day. That didn't happen. Maybe next year. Maybe next year. Um, but I did read poems from many of the 26 chapters and some of the lessons from the 26 chapters because every one of these chapters ends with a lesson and has several poems in it. So there's about 92 poems in this book, which covers about 7 years of my life. And life is really funny. I know that there is divine order and divine planning and divine timing and all of that because of just the way my life has unfolded. So when I went to get covers.com to get this cover done, I told them that I wanted a woman with I told them I wanted a woman with natural hair and that I wanted her to be fishing in water because the title is Plenty of Guppies and that's a play on there's plenty of fish in the sea idea. So I wanted her to be kind of putting her hands in water and I wanted men to be in her hands. Now, I didn't mention several things that showed up on this cover that I thought were very uh, had messages. Okay, so her hair is reddish brown. Now, on this live, my hair looks black, but in person, my hair is reddish brown. My dad's hair was reddish brown. So for her hair to be this color, which is the color that my hair is a lot of times, is quite amazing of all the pictures that they could have picked to make this cover. Um, this imagery, the way she's standing in the water and everything, the way the water is coming out of her hands, it's also very reminiscent of goddess imagery. And when I was thinking about the cover, didn't even occur to me that there would be any allusions to that. Um, and even the color pink, you know, wasn't originally thought of. And pink is very symbolic of femininity. And, it's very interesting that it took me getting divorced to, in a sense, reclaim my full femininity because I can't speak for other women. But for me, when I was married, I ended up taking on a lot of masculine energy. I ended up taking on a lot of work, more work than I ever expected, more work than my partner was doing. I actually became softer and more free flowing after my divorce. So the way that this image ended up is really, it just lets me know again, like there's order in the world. There's like divine things going on. And then when I decided I was going to do a sequel, because this covers 7 years of my life, and at the end of this book, I'm still single, and that's not a problem, of course, because I embrace singleness. I don't see it as anything negative at all. In fact, I feel like my single period has been the most fruitful of my entire life, the most freeing, the most exhilarating, the most uh, eye-opening and hopeful time of my life. Now, there's a lot of things that happen in this book, a lot of ups and downs, but singleness is not a problem. But when I decided I was going to do a follow-up to the book, which is this book, I want you to look at the difference. So in this one, I didn't realize it when I wrote it. There were a lot of things that were hidden from me. My eyes were not open. She doesn't even have eyes on this book. And, when I first saw the image, I was like, she doesn't have any eyes. But then I was like, well, it doesn't really matter because the focus is on her actions of fishing in the sea. So the eyes really don't matter. They don't matter. So I was like, I love the image. I'm going with the image, even though she doesn't have eyes. And then I was like, okay, it's very important that when I come up with the sequel, she now has eyes. She now has a full face. And I realized that I had been living in a storm. You can see on this one, there's a storm, there's lightning, there's water, and there's a certain gentleman. I'm trying to hold this. I'm going to do it this way. There's a certain gentleman here. If you see the red flag, and the water coming out of him is polluted, right? So sometimes we allow people in our lives. Sometimes we may even try to get rid of them. We may even break off the relationship, but they keep coming back. It's the Hoover, they keep coming back. And we don't actually know what's going on. We're confused, even though we feel like our eyes are fully opened. We may not be seeing everything. And what I learned after that relationship ended, because I'm coming up on the anniversary of the ending of this relationship that I got into with this particular guppy. I learned that there are many, 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 many manipulation techniques, many, many toxic traits. And I ended up putting you see that index? It's actually a 3-page index of 80 manipulative traits and toxic traits and their effects. And so the first chapter of this book, this second book, is called Anxiety. And it's got a lot of similarities to the first book because it's dedicated to my readers. And here's, the title pages. All right. The titles of each chapter are really about the effects and some of the techniques that are manipulative. There's a timeline. You can see the timeline. So it covers the same period of time. This covers 7 years. This covers 10 years. So this goes back over the 7 years and pulls out things that I didn't cover in the first book, things that I left out of the first book. So it's kind of like seeing a movie, one of those movies where you get to see, you saw it from one character's perspective, but you get to see it from another character's perspective, or you get to see some of the behind the scenes or whatever. So chapter 1 is anxiety. One of the first signs that you're in an abusive relationship is you start to have anxiety. And there's poems in here. In fact, this book, unlike the other book that I had, actually has an index of the poems that are in here. So you can see there's the poems. They're in alphabetical order. So chapter 1 is anxiety. Chapter 2, okay, so anxiety is this kind of feeling of dread, this kind of feeling of, it could be overwhelm. It could be this restlessness, this nervousness. Chapter 2 is breadcrumbing. Now, that may not be a term that you've ever heard before, but breadcrumbing kind of alludes to, dropping breadcrumbs. If you ever heard the story of Hansel and Gretel, they were dropping breadcrumbs because they thought that they were going to be able to find their way back out of the forest because the breadcrumbs would be there to lay a trail for them to get out. But of course, the breadcrumbs got eaten by the birds in the forest, so they didn't end up having that way out. So there's plenty of guppies and other dating misadventures. There is my link tree where you can find everything. I have some books on Amazon. Some are free on Kindle Unlimited. But anyway, so breadcrumbing is the idea that sometimes a person will be in your life and they'll notice that you're starting to get a little distant. They're noticing that maybe you're starting to complain. Maybe you're starting to feel a little antsy and you're not as happy as you used to be. So they'll start dropping little breadcrumbs. They'll just give you enough to keep you hooked. They're not really feeding you, because relationships should feed you. We should feed each other. If we're in a relationship, we should be feeding each other. We should be nurturing each other. We should be watering each other. We should be giving each other enough, to feel satisfied, to have our needs met. But if somebody were to give you a breadcrumb, that they were literally just to break off a piece of bread and you're hungry and they give that to you, it's not enough to meet your need. It's just enough to make you think they're going to give you more, make you wait a little longer for that next piece of bread that they pull off and hand you. So it's just a tactic to delay you leaving, or delay you complaining, or delay you being restless. That's what it is. And so a lot of people will breadcrumb. They'll give you a call or a text or take you on a date, but they're not really intending on really giving you what you want, like the true attention, the true commitment, the true interaction. They're just giving you enough to kind of sate you for just a little while, to calm you down, to pacify you. Like, I've been a mother, I've been a grandmother, and one of the things that you might do to a baby if you're not willing to feed them right then is pacify them, give them a pacifier. One of the things you might do to a kid if you're not really ready to give them lunch or dinner is give them a little tiny snack. It's not enough to sate their hunger, but that it's going to pacify them for a little while. So sometimes breadcrumbing is used to pacify us for a little while. And if you've never heard this term and you don't know what somebody is doing, you feel that you should be giving them the benefit of the doubt. You should be believing their potential. You should be trusting them. But there are some people that know that this technique will work for quite a long time. And there are people in relationships who have been breadcrumbed for years. And sometimes breadcrumbing goes with love bombing. So they come into your life, they shower you with attention, they shower you with affection, they make you think they're the perfect guy, the perfect woman, and they just blow your mind in the very beginning. And then slowly they pull all that back, and then they begin to breadcrumb you. Now you know that they can do everything that you want. You know that they can love on you and pour into you and give you words of affirmation, give you quality time, give you physical touch, whatever your love language is. You know they can do it because they showed you they can do it, but they pulled it all back. And now they're breadcrumbing you. And you keep wondering, how do I get back to that first person? And there are people who stay in relationships for years, even abusive and toxic relationships, because they're wondering where that other person is. But the sad thing is, a lot of times that other person never even existed. That other person was just an image, just a representative, just a mask that they put on, and they never really were that person. So the person that's breadcrumbing you is the real person. And that's one of the hardest things to accept about some of these toxic relationships, is that sometimes the person you fell in love with actually doesn't exist. And sometimes that person that you fell in love with was the person that you loved, watching you, seeing what you liked, seeing how you were, and mirroring you back to yourself. And so you actually fell in love with yourself in a different body. And that is insidious. Insidious. So chapter 2 is called Breadcrumbing. And I am going to read you a little poem. Now, the book is written, I was going on dates, so you can see the little fish. All right, you see the lesson from chapter 1 there. At the end of every chapter, there's a lesson. And then you have the fish for the dates that I was going on. And I was learning from different people, having different experiences. But in this particular book, which is the Plenty of Guppies, the Perfect Storm book, the second book, you have these manipulative techniques that are explained. Trauma bonding is something that can happen in a toxic relationship. And what a trauma bond is it feels like love, but it's not. So let's say that you have been love bombed and this person is breadcrumbing you. What they could be doing on purpose is giving you a chemical cocktail. So when we feel loved, our bodies release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. It's released in our brain, it goes through our entire body. This is the same hormone that mothers release when they breastfeed their children, and the children release back to the mother as they're being breastfed. So this gives us a sense of family, of safety, of security, of warmth, of closeness, of intimacy, all of these things that we know from sometime in the past, right? Most of us have felt oxytocin when we got hugs, when we were carried around by people who loved us, when we were listened to and validated. We felt the bonding hormone oxytocin, okay? We might have even felt excitement about seeing those people. That's dopamine. So oxytocin and dopamine get released into the brain when really good things happen that make you feel loved. But then we talked about anxiety a minute ago. If that person is making you nervous about when they're going to show up, if they're going to show up, if they're going to follow through with what they said they're going to do, they start releasing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Okay. And then sometimes you get other hormones in there. But basically, what a trauma bond is just when your cortisol gets to the point where you're like, this is stressing me out, I'm ready to go, they give you a dopamine hit. They give you something that's going to make you feel good. They give you some great loving. They give you a gift. They give you a really wonderful compliment. They release dopamine and oxytocin on purpose. And so what happens is you go from cortisol, this negative emotion, to this positive emotion. And they keep cycling this so that you can actually become chemically addicted to this low, high, low, high, low, high. And it can make you feel like, oh, this is so exciting. This relationship, I mean, man, I feel so alive, because they're actually taking you like on this little roller coaster. On roller coasters, you feel very alive. You scream and you yell and you laugh and your emotions are going a million miles a minute. It is not boring at all. Okay, you have the highs and lows, highs and lows, highs and lows. It's not healthy to stay on a roller coaster. Emotionally, mentally, it is not healthy. Your nervous system is actually being damaged because we are not meant to stay with cortisol being released all the time, anxiety being released all the time, fear, self-doubt. What did I do? How did I make them change? What do I need to change? How do I fix this? We're not meant to be in that kind of uproarious questioning state. That's not healthy. All right. But then when they come back with the dopamine hit, with the oxytocin hit, you're like, oh, things are back to normal. I can breathe. I can relax. I can relax. I can relax. So the trauma bond basically is that low, high, low, high, low, high, low, high that they're putting you in. And the book goes into more details about how the trauma bond works, what it does to you emotionally, what it does to you mentally, how it lays the foundation for a lot of other things. All right, so this book goes into trauma bonding, and there's a thing called a trauma bond sandwich, which actually goes into exactly how this is laid out in a lot of relationships. So in this chapter, there's a lot of poetry, but a lot of times you're feeling all of these mixed emotions and you don't know how to deal with it. And it's so overwhelming, especially if you've never been in this situation before. It's so overwhelming. You're wondering what's going on, So I'm going to just read you a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple of things that I have in this chapter. So like I said, there's several pieces of poetry, and there's also journal excerpts. Because I'm a journaler, I can go back to my journal excerpts and I can actually share them. So I have some journal excerpts. You see the little lines right there? Those are actually journal excerpts from my journals that I shared in this book. And I also have pictures from this chapter. Actually happens to be from 2015. Now this is a horrible picture. But this was the first time that I actually performed on stage. It is blurry, 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 because somebody, my boyfriend at the time, took that picture. But I was at Sugar Hill Lounge, the very first time I performed. So this memoir actually goes through the birth of my career as a spoken word artist and everything that happened with me. You can kind of see how that happened. But I'm gonna share with you a piece of poetry. Here is another picture. This is me taking a selfie in the bathroom in 2015. So there's pictures in here of me from the past. All right, and I am gonna read. I think I'm gonna read a poem called Chemistry. So I was so in love. Oh my gosh! In 2015, I was so in love. This particular gentleman that I was in love with was called the Muse in the book. That's not his real name, of course, and he's married now, and we broke up a long, long, long time ago. But he was so instrumental in my life, and I just want to say, it amazes me so much when men will say, "Oh, you post all this negative stuff about men. You hate men." I love men. I really do. I am where I am today because of some of the men that came into my life. I mean, and he's one of them, and I'm so grateful because he was the first person, the very first person who wasn't a teacher who said you should write. And I want you to write, and I'm going to support you as a writer, and I believe in you as a writer. I had never had a Black person tell me that, a man tell me that, and he followed it up. He was my biggest cheerleader. I can't even explain to you how much of a cheerleader he was. I tell you in the book. So if you want to read about that, you know, you can read in the book. But I'm just going to share a really short poem with you. And this was a poem that I wrote about him. And you can kind of just see how I felt at the time. All right. Chemistry. Beloved, you are the sun. I am the moon, reflecting in purity your light. In your arms, the world can bend, but not break me. Your heart support connects me to the source, reminding me of who I am and whose I am. I am transforming, a being of light infused with light, wisdom, knowledge, creation, power. Our oneness is unstoppable. The world lies at our feet, the stars within our reach. I close my eyes in safety, for you are vision, planning, surety. I yield to you, knowing there is no safer place to be than in your arms. We join our atoms, merge ourselves. We are not two, but one. Your breath is my breath. In you, I see eternity. In you, I feel the very essence of life, of love, my head, my Lord, my King, illuminator, motivator, co-creator. I grow from you. You are my root. I am your tree. Pluck my fruit and delight in our chemistry. Namaste. The God in me sees the God in you. So, I don't know what you believe about relationships and how things happen when they end, but I will always love that man. It don't matter how many years pass, doesn't matter. I will always love that man. And I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful that God allowed me to have some of the people that I was gifted with just for a moment in time because they changed my life. And I will never be the same. And if you happen to meet one of those beautiful people like that, just love on them, appreciate them, let them know how much they mean to you, because sometimes those people get taken from us, and we lose them, but we can always remember, and we can always look back, and we can always show gratitude for the fact that we even knew them at all. And I'm so grateful for that. So I will be doing some lives or some other little audios from this book because I was focused on this book last month. And this is mental health. May is mental health. and that came talk, Mental Health Awareness Month. And I wrote all my books for my mental health, but this one especially for anyone in a toxic relationship, for anyone who is dealing with what they think might be a narcissist. Like I said, there is literally a 80 list or 80 item index in the back. And I literally take you through A to Z of the things that I personally experienced and personally went through therapy for, and how I learned about them, how I saw them in my own life, how I healed from them. And today I just mentioned trauma bonding and breadcrumbing and love bombing. So those are three, so I would encourage you, get the book and, like and share. And I'd love to have any comments that you guys have, any questions that you have. Please put them in the chat. Of course, this is going to be on Facebook, and I'm going to put it on I get hiccups, on some other platforms. But thank you so much. May you walk in Zennurgy. And check out my podcast, the Zennurgy podcast. I didn't mention this, but there are 14 chapters, audio chapters of this book, the first book, all right, on the Zennurgy podcast. And that link tree right there takes you to the Zennurgy podcast. And episode 67 is chapter 1 of Plenty of Guppies and Other Dating Misadventures. So thanks so much for you guys tuning in. Please like, share, follow. You can always go on my link tree if you like what I said and you want to tip me. I definitely take tips. Or if you want to sponsor the podcast, if you like these kind of messages going out, I do actually record actual podcasts. This is a live stream. It's not a real podcast, but I do record actual podcasts, and I am always looking for sponsors for my podcast where I could promote you, your business, whatever you have going on, and you can help me to do what I do, workshops, poetry, comedy, music shows, as well as books. You can help me with what I do. But thank you guys so much. May you walk in Zennurgy.